Well, welcome to the channel, viewers. You're with Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, Theologist, Central Coast, New South Wales, Australia. From the Pro Theologist channel, which I haven't been working on lately, and the Pro Brick exclusive YouTube channel for the tradies. The Pro Theologist channel's for the religious people, or the Christians, or that kind of thing, spiritual. The Pro Brick exclusive is also equally as spiritual, but for the tradies and people that aren't so religious. If you haven't subscribed, do subscribe. Now, when it comes to relationships and you're trying to get a relationship off the ground, I've been in relationships for years and haven't got them off the ground because the people that you're with just ain't going to be able to do that. They usually have a narcissistic trait, an MPD of some kind. Don't talk to them about it. They're not going to get it. The narcissist usually doesn't know that they are. All you can do is spectate and see how things are going to go. You'll notice that in most cases where narcissism is involved, these people deteriorate. They'll stay in the relationship, but they will deteriorate. Their contribution to the relationship will be minimal. They will use you as a form of supply, sexual supply, maybe company, whatever the case is. You'll notice that they'll give 100% effort for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 months if you're lucky, and then they'll start to deplete. And this depletion's micro-incremental. It'll come micro-incrementally because they'll be testing what your tolerances are. Excuse me. How much you'll take, how much you won't take, what your boundaries are, whether you'll speak up or not. And they'll test you. And if they run into a super empath or somebody that has boundaries and knows what they want and understands how people can use people for supply, and not love, this is going to cause a problem for them because a lot of these people are used to people coming around using them for supply, which teaches them to use other people for supply, and it's where the masses hang. This is where the masses hang out. Nobody commits to anything. Nobody's able to really produce any lasting fruit out of anything. Everybody's got no self-worth. They're all martyrs and victims and usually addicts and drunks, and they're into reckless sex and all this other stuff. It's just, it doesn't produce anything positive. There's a lot of illness, fighting, selfishness, manipulation, control. There's incredible enmeshments, and when you go into these dimensions, you're just not going to produce anything that's going to have lasting fruit. These people live for the moment. They want the thrill that they can get at that moment. And when the narcissist meets somebody, probably usually by accident, they don't even realize that there are people of light out here at these dimensions. You will come into their space and they'll go, I want this. And I've had, I don't know, over a dozen of these women, and they'll get you in the cot within an hour. You'll be in the cot within an hour, and they're trying to land you somatically. They're called Sematic Narcissists. They use their sexuality to try and hook you in to their life. But I had a pretty wild young life. We were into the girls at a very young age, and had some wonderful times and all that, but the old Sematic Narcissists who have had their day, have been pumped and dumped and used and abused and haven't been able to hold relationships and things because of their narcissism. And you've got to realize a lot of people don't realize what they're doing. They've got no clue. They end up just going back to getting whatever they can get because they can't hold anything. And the fact of the matter is, as much as they want an exclusive relationship, their narcissism undermines that because narcissism's about deterioration and fading and falling away. So when the somatic sexual narcissist, who depends on their physical attributes like boobs and figure and this kind of thing, facial features, as they get older, they don't have the same amount of influence. So their level of people that they need to accept reduces. Or if they get somebody of good value, they usually get pumped and dumped. It's usually a predator passing through or this kind of thing. And it just doesn't work well for them anyway. A lot of these people get diseases. They've definitely got mind troubles as it is. They're just allowing any Tom, Dick and Harry to come into them and through them. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. The illnesses get worse. The lifestyle which they live gets worse. Instead of getting ahead, they fall behind, because this is what the darkness wants. And the somatic narcissist doesn't realize that playing with sex and all this kind of thing does not produce anything positive. It just produces at that moment. So they live for the moment, but they have no foresight to see what the consequences are from what they do within that moment. They know better, but they can't help themselves because they've become slaves, as the Bible says, to their sin. Now, these people have flying monkeys or supporters, usually in forms of adult children or dysfunctional friends. They are maladjusted. They don't usually work things out in a way in which they are going to be able to move forward, and so they resign themselves to being stuck with where they're at. And it's sad because they have all the potential in the world to be happy, peaceful, loving people. But what you've got to realize is if people are undermining their intimate relationships, they're usually undermining the rest of their life as well, right down to their children. It goes right through the generations. It just keeps getting passed on. You'll find that these people use alcohol, drugs, other substances to try and numb their lack of accountability and responsibility towards themselves. You'll notice that they have a grandiose attitude and perception of themselves, that they're more than what they really are. And this is the reason why they don't get anywhere, because their grandiose gap between their fantasy and their reality is so wide. They're completely deluded about the way in which they should do things, in which they can get ahead. So because they've got a backward view of themselves, everything else goes backward along with it, because they keep undermining their capability to have the mindset and thoughtfulness to navigate their way in which their life can move forward. And see, everything about the narcissist, when it's manifesting, is degenerative. Things just go from underneath them, usually starting with the people that are closest to them. For some of these people, they'll have adult children and they'll be enmeshed. There'll be emotional incest right through the relationships. This gives them a sense of security about not being left alone, because narcissists, whether they're passive-aggressive, covert, somatic, communal, whatever it is, do have a fear of being left alone. And this fear is built upon the fact that none of their relationships have worked, and they've been unable to identify the fact that there is an issue within their psyche, that they are undermining these relationships from within themselves. Now, the problem with the narcissist is if they run into a super empath or an empath person, the narcissist can disguise themselves as being empathic, but a lot of their empathy is based on income. I've known a few of these covert female narcissists, 3 of them actually, married one of them. They'll use the disabilities of others to profit from. Now, I'm not saying there's no genuineness in what they do or anything like that's not what I'm saying, but there's a means of profit surrounding the empathy, which gives them a sense of identity. But you have to associate this identity with profit, not charity. It's a totally different thing to Christian charity. It's for profit, and they have to be identified as it being that. Now, what happens when you end up in a relationship with one of these people? Well, they'll try and condition you down. They'll try and condition you to a point, and they'll use freedom as the means of micro-incrementally bringing the relationship down from having any weight where you're building something substantial with this person. It's all about supply. They come, get their supply, and then go back with what you've shared with them. And I don't know how a lot of them use it. A lot of them just waste it. A lot of these people are actually asexual, but they like sex with other people. They have a lot of sex with themselves, these people. And a lot of them just, as they get older, they just shut off and give up because they can't go through the pain of trying to have someone in their life and then wrecking things and going through the grief and suffering of the separation. You've got to understand that there are signs, particularly with the alcohol and drug addict ones. They're going to tell you things that they shouldn't when you meet them. You'll know them for an hour and you'll know just about everything about their life. They'll tell you that you're the only one that knows, which is a lie. They are tremendous liars to get there to infiltrate your life. They'll make you feel more highly than you ought to hook you in. They'll tell you stories that, you know, you would think, I don't really need to hear this, but it's all about manipulating you into getting closer to them, particularly if they like you straight up. What you've got to realise is if you've done the work and you're doing the work and you're a healthy-minded, physically well-looked-after person, you know your game, these people, man, they know the value of this because they haven't lived in that dimension. And when you come along and they go, this person is A-grade supply, they're going to do and tell you anything at the start to get you in. And what these people don't realise is that your ability to naturally perform outweighs these people that they've probably been mucking around with on alcohol and drugs and all this other stuff, who intermittently perform. When you're mentally and physically aware of yourself and been looking after yourself, right, you're a super empath. The narcissist takes great, what could I say? They look at this in awe because they've been unable to get anywhere near this themselves. They've just been subject to whatever can come along and whatever that's going to do to them. So when you come along in your pure supply, your mind's right, you've looked after your mind, you've looked after your body works the way that it should, and beyond that. I've had women say to me that you've got the strength of 10 men. Well, I don't know what that means, and they know what they're talking about, but that's because if you do the work, you get the rewards, and it's a sacrifice. I don't let anything near my mind or body that's not going to add to it, and I'm against drugs and alcohol. But that doesn't mean if the person that I'm with is dealing with those things that I'm going to judge them, and nor should they judge me. It's a two-way street. And I've worked in with a lot of these people, but they don't seem to get anywhere because the narcissism that's inside them from the hurt and pain and unresolved, because that's what narcissism does, it just doesn't resolve anything, keeps undermining their opportunities to go ahead in life. That's why they resign themselves to just giving in. They just go to work, get through the day. If they've got someone that'll give them some supply, sexually, they'll take it. They'll put up with their adult children or whatever else is going on. They've probably got pets like reptiles or whatever, dogs, cats, birds, maybe a lizard, I don't know. And they'll find peace in that because they depend on that person. See, it's all about, for the narcissist, depending on them. And when they meet someone that's not dependent on people or sex or alcohol or drugs or anything, that really awakens them to a side of life that they always wanted but couldn't find their way into. And it gives them a tremendous fascination. And they'll try and mirror it. It's actually sad when you're watching the person trying to mirror where you're at, and because they're so damaged, they're so physically damaged, you can tell their organs would be ruined from nicotine and all this other stuff. And they're convinced that they're going to be all right. The next thing you're up the hospital with them, and I've had a couple of these. It's really, really, really sad. And they just don't seem to be able to, no matter how hard you try and support them and look after them, come up with their side of the relationship. And you've got to be dead set, bulletproof, and harsh. Look, even if the person, the narcissist, learns nothing from being with you, and that's their business, if you've shown them what your boundaries are and what their performance should be, and they're not willing to follow that, they can't get away from the fact that they've seen the light. If they resign themselves, as I've said before, to just putting up with the bottom part of life and the lower part of life, and that's what they've chosen, that's on them. Let them go. You've got to get on with your time. Is short. These people will waste your time because they're wasting their own time. People that waste their time will waste your time. You've got to understand this. And they don't care, so why should you? So if you're in a relationship with somebody and it's disintegrating all the time, and it's like you've got to teach them how to love you, you're with the wrong person. And that's in your face, and that hurts, and it's going to hurt as you try and work your way out of it. If they're not willing to resolve the deep, if they're not willing to resolve the minor issues, what makes you think they're going to resolve the bigger issues? They're not. They're not. The issues will remain unresolved. They'll use those issues to tire you out. That's the element where narcissism tries to destroy you. But if you're on your game, you're just watching it and you're just going, oh my God, what next? And they'll bring something that'll happen that'll cause you to throw a reverse discard where they want to get out, but they've got to look the victim, so they need you to kick them out. That allows them to go back into their world and be accepted and heralded as the martyr. But it's all fantasy. A lot of these people, the masses, live in a fantasy. They don't think of the consequences of their actions. They don't think of, what happens when you lose a relationship. It seems like it's all just a joke. And no. You've got to be very, very careful. The narcissist is about degenerating. They'll degenerate. They'll minimalize as much as they can to get what they want, but they want to get it as easily as they can with as minimal. I've had women, I've had to do nothing. They think they're the first ones that come along. It just surprises me. They just come along. You know that all they want is sex. And they're putting on this show, and you're just going, yeah, this is all great, yeah. And you go through the motions, and off they go again. They don't ring, they don't text. But when you meet them, when you meet these women, they're sending photos of themselves. They're sending texts that, as I've said before, make William Shakespeare look like a poet that hasn't even learnt what poetry. I've had texts, man, the poetry about the sun and the moon and the stars. Could have sold for millions if I had to use me head. Could have sold them for millions, but that all fades away, and it fades away really quick. You don't get the pictures anymore, you don't get rung up, and you just mirror it. My advice to you is just mirror it, because our determination tries to keep us to keep building a building that doesn't want to be built. So these people are fading away, and their narcissism is fading them out. They're in the devalue stage, and they're trying to work out the discard, and we're trying to build. And they're just looking at us going, what's wrong with this idiot? Can't they see that I got to get out of this? And you think they're getting closer because you're trying to get closer, but they're just looking at you deep inside themselves going, this person must be a fool to be putting up with this. They're not stupid, and nor should you be. So open your eyes, let the light awaken you. They don't like people that are awake because they can't play their games, and it is a game. Don't forget they've got flying monkeys in the background that'll hate you, and they'll be getting counsel off them. It won't be any good. The counsel will be misleading. And you've got to make sure that you don't lose your identity and your ability to look after yourself and not be deceived, because these people will use your energy, they'll use your time, they'll isolate you from the inner part of their life, which really isn't worth being involved in most cases. And you've got to stay on point. You've got to stay strong, healthy, keep your mind healthy, eat well, look after your body, and maintain yourself in a way in which when the narcissist goes down, they go down alone. What you've got to realise is when you tell a narcissist to leave, get your stuff and leave, like you've pushed me beyond what I can tolerate, you are actually not what you say you are. That causes a narcissistic injury. And what I've found is, by the time this happens, their adult children have had narcissistic collapses from the light. They don't realise the power you got. Your light and your lifestyles come in, and you've got the children having narcissistic breakdowns and collapses. The women that I've been with haven't known what's been going on. They've got no comprehension that these children haven't been raised right. They think they know everything, and they know nothing. They've got nothing to show for themselves except debt and the fact that they need their mummy. And these mothers will disenable them, continue to disenable them and rescue them. And it's just, I've seen so much destruction. And so while while the mother's coming for the masculinity, she doesn't realise that she's destroying everything around her and herself because she's not committing to it. So she's working with somebody that's playing the game back at her. You're not going to attach to somebody that you know isn't going to last. So you're doing all your stuff and you're doing everything you can, and you show it, and you're watching, you're delivering yourself, and you start to become narcissistic. These people can get on your nerves after a while because they're not contributing in the way that they should. They're not unifying in the way that they should. They're just outsiders coming in to get what they can and then go to the outside again, and that's where they belong, on the street. Back in their world, not your world. They don't want the true benefits of the light, because they're taking your light back into their darkness and they're just wasting it. You've got to understand this. They're not changing their life. Now, whatever happens after you've gone's their business, and you really shouldn't care less. Doesn't mean that you're careless, but you've got to get on with, let them go. You saw what they were like when you come along. Do you think that's going to be any different after you've gone? Well, hopefully it will be. Hopefully they'll improve from knowing you and, learning some things about themselves, being confronted with some realities. But a lot of these people won't. They'll just drug on, drink on, use their sex until one day their body and their mind goes, that's it. You've had your turn. You've abused me. You've abused yourself for all these years. You thought you were invincible, but you're not. And their life just gives in on them. You see them everywhere. Just old people that are wrecked up, hunched over. They thought they were going to beat themselves, but you can't. We need to look after ourselves. So if you're in a relationship with a deteriorating person that's making it hard for you, they're not in unison. You need to take stock. Come back to yourself, start hauling your energy back into yourself, bring your mind back to yourself, and get yourself right. I'm Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, theologist. It's going to hurt, it's going to be painful. I've just done 4 months. It's a pain in the neck, particularly when you get deceived by the love bomb. As soon as I saw you, you were the one, and all this rubbish. I mean, these people, you know, they can't have a proper relationship to save themselves. Doesn't matter how well you look after them or nurture them, they're going to do things to give you the shits, and you're just going to have to remove yourself because they wear you out. And they've got their flying monkeys working behind them as well to make sure that happens, because they don't want the person that you're with to have any, you know, substantial lifestyle either. Oh no, that's just not, you know, you've got to realise these people are broken. They haven't resolved their issues. They're probably not going to, and they're going to take you down with them if they can. Don't let them. Be aware of yourself. Know if you're being used. Know if you're being used as supply, sexual, financial, and don't be like a lot of these simp blokes that keep giving these people money after they're gone and everything. Tell them to go. If they can't, you know, turn around and go, I'm sorry about everything that's happened and that, they were never in it. That's your proof. You were just a form of supply. You need to accept that you weren't as important as you thought you were. Reverend Dr. J.W. Morrison, Theologist, out.